Today we begin the fourth and last part of this course. In the first part of the course, we discussed the cognitive revolution and its impact on the world. In the second part of the course, we examined the agricultural revolution. In the third part of the course, we discussed the process of human unification, how money and empires and universal religions caused the whole of humankind to be unified into a single system. How, for example, let me take my friend the dollar again from the pocket. How, for example, today in the world, all the people in all the world understand what this is and respect this very much. How, for example, many people around the world, they can understand what's written on it in Latin script and in English, say Federal Reserve Note, the United States of America. This note is legal tender. Millions of people around the world understand it thanks to the legacy of the Roman Empire with its Latin script and the British Empire with its English. And this note also says on it, "In God we trust." And hundreds of millions, billions of people around the world trust this God, and therefore they also trust this dollar. This is the legacy of the universal religions like Christianity and Islam. So this was the third part of the course. In the last part of the course, we will dedicate our attention to the scientific revolution and to the political, social, and economic implications of the scientific revolution. The scientific revolution is the name that we give to the phenomenal growth of human power over the last 500 years, which resulted from the discoveries and inventions of modern science. In speed and magnitude, nothing like it has ever happened before. If, for example, a peasant who lived in the year 1000 AD fell asleep and woke up 500 years later in the year 1500 AD, the world which the Arisen peasants would have encountered would have seemed to this peasant very similar to the world which he left 500 years previously. Despite many changes in technology, in political boundaries, in beliefs and so forth, on the whole, it was the same world. The life of most people, the simple peasant, was almost exactly the same in the year 1500 as they were in the year 1000. But if a person from the year 1500 would have fallen asleep and woke up today, in the early 21st century, he or she would have found themselves in a completely different world, strange beyond comprehension. They might well have thought to themselves that they are no longer on earth, and the only question left open is whether this is heaven or this is hell, but it is certainly not earth. Things which we today take for granted, like nuclear bombs, or airplanes, or vaccination, or cellular phones, or computers, were completely beyond the wildest dreams of people 500 years ago. Abilities which today you and me take for granted, like talking on the phone with somebody on the other side of the world, or reaching the other side of the world in 24 hours, they were considered 500 years ago to belong to angels and gods. For instance, now I'm talking to you over the internet. I'm talking to maybe tens of thousands of students at the same time over the internet. Try to explain this to somebody living in the age of Columbus. Or take, for example, this lamp, which have accompanied us from the Big Bang until now, and I never referred to it, I never said anything about it, so now it's the time to say something about this lamp. If I want light, I simply press a button and there is light. And I don't want this light anymore, so I again press a button and the light disappears. Now, for us, this is trivial. We don't think about it as some kind of amazing power, but try to explain this power and where it came from to our ancestors 500 years ago, you would find that it's completely beyond their not only means of understanding, but even beyond their dreams and fantasies. How did humans obtain all these powers, from light to nuclear weapons and internet and airplanes and things like that? Above all, humans obtained these powers by investing resources in scientific research. Until the early modern period, humans all over the world invested very little effort in scientific research because they doubted their ability to obtain new medical or military or economic powers. Kings and emperors certainly gave money to education and scholarship, but the main aim of scholarship in the pre-modern world was to preserve existing capabilities and not to acquire new capabilities. The typical king gave money to priests and philosophers and poets in the hope that they would legitimize his rule and maintain the social order. He did not expect these priests and philosophers to discover new medications, to invent new weapons, or to stimulate economic growth. In the last 5 centuries, however, humans increasingly came to believe that they could gain new, more and more powers by investing money and resources in scientific research. And this wasn't just blind faith. It was repeatedly proven in practice. Investing resources in scientific research indeed gave people more and more power. And the more power that it gave them, the more resources they were able and willing to put into even more research. For example, the government of the United States for the last few decades have allocated billions of dollars to study nuclear physics. The knowledge produced by all this research has made possible the construction of nuclear power stations, which provide cheap electricity for American industries. These industries now pay more taxes to the United States government, which uses some of these taxes to finance even more research in nuclear physics and so forth and so on. You can see here the basic feedback loop of the scientific revolution in action. The basic message of this feedback loop and the basic message of this entire lesson is that science needs more than just research in order to make progress. Science and scientific research depend on mutual reinforcement between science, politics, and economics. Political and economic institutions provide the resources without which scientific research is almost impossible. In return, scientific research provides new powers that are used, among other things, to obtain new resources, and some of these new resources are reinvested back in research. So this is the basic feedback loop of the scientific revolution, and in order to understand the scientific revolution, it is therefore not enough to study just science, what Newton said and what Galileo said and what Einstein said. You must also understand the bonds between science, politics, and economics. In this lesson, the first lesson of the 4th part of the course, we will look at the unique nature of modern science. We'll try to understand how is modern science different from all previous traditions of knowledge. In the following lessons, we will examine closely the formation of the alliance between science and politics and economics. In particular, we will look at the formation of the bond between modern science, the European empires, and the economics of capitalism, the capitalist system of economics. But let's begin, first of all, with understanding what makes modern science so unique, so different from all previous traditions of knowledge. After all, at least since the cognitive revolutions, humans have always tried to figure out how the universe works. This is not something new of the last 500 years. Our ancestors, thousands and even tens of thousands of years ago, they put a deal of time and effort in trying to discover the rules that govern the natural world around them. So what is so special and different about modern science? Well, modern science differs from all previous traditions of knowledge in three critical ways. First and foremost, it differs in its willingness to admit ignorance. Modern science is based on the admission that we do not know. Modern science assumes that we don't know everything. Even more importantly, modern science accepts that the things that we think we know could still be proven wrong as we gain more knowledge. In modern science, no concept, no idea, no theory is considered sacred and beyond challenge. So this is the first unique characteristic of modern science. The second unique characteristic is the centrality of observation and mathematics. After admitting ignorance, what modern scientists try to do is to obtain new knowledge. They do it by gathering observations on the world and using mathematical tools to connect these observations into comprehensive theories. The third unique feature of modern science is that it aims to acquire new powers. Modern science is never content just with creating theories and understanding how things work. Modern science uses these theories in order to acquire new powers, and in particular, in order to develop new technologies. The real aim of modern science is not truth, it is power. Let us now take a closer look at each of these three main characteristics of modern science. The first characteristic, as we said, is the willingness to admit ignorance. In this sense, the scientific revolution has not been a revolution of knowledge, as it is usually depicted. The scientific revolution has been a revolution of ignorance. The greatest discovery that launched the scientific revolution forward was the discovery of ignorance, the discovery that humans do not know the answers to the most important questions. Pre-modern traditions of knowledge, like Islam or Christianity or Buddhism, they asserted that everything that is important to know about the world was already known. The great gods, or the one almighty God, or the wise people of the past, they knew everything there is to know, and they revealed whatever we need to know in their scriptures and oral traditions. If you want to know the answer to important questions, all you need to do is read these ancient texts and understand them properly. It was inconceivable that the Bible or the Quran or the Vedas were missing out on some crucial secret of the universe, a secret that must still be discovered by us mortal people. Ancient traditions of knowledge admitted only two kinds of ignorance. First, a particular individual might well be ignorant about something very important, but in that case, to obtain the necessary knowledge, all that he or she needed to do was ask somebody wiser. There was no need to discover something that nobody knew. For example, if a peasant in some medieval European village wanted to know how the human race originated, He assumed, and everybody assumed, that the Christian tradition held the definitive answer. Maybe the peasant himself didn't know, but all he needed to do in order to receive an answer was to ask the priest. And if the priest didn't know, then he asked the bishop or the pope, and they knew by looking at the sacred texts and understanding them. Secondly, the other option for there being ignorance in the world is that not only one person, but all people might be ignorant of unimportant things. By definition, according to the traditional religions and so forth, whatever the great gods or the wise people of the past did not bother to tell us in the sacred texts and traditions was unimportant. For example, if our medieval peasant wanted to know, say, how spiders weave their webs, it was pointless to ask the priest or the bishop or the pope because they didn't know, and there was no answer to this question in any of the Christian scriptures. It doesn't say anywhere in the Bible how spiders weave their webs. However, this did not mean that Christianity was deficient. It meant that understanding how spiders weave their webs was unimportant. After all, God knew perfectly well everything, including how spiders do it. If this was a vital piece of information necessary for human prosperity and salvation, God would have taken care to include a comprehensive explanation of spiders in the Bible. But there was no such explanation, so this showed that this was unimportant. Now, Christianity did not forbid people to study spiders if they so liked, but people engaged in the study of spiders had to accept their peripheral role in society, and they had to accept the irrelevance of their findings to the eternal truths of the Christian religion and society. No matter what a scholar might discover about spiders, that knowledge was just trivia, with no potential bearing on the fundamental truths of society and politics and economics. In fact, things were never quite so simple. In every age, even the most pious and conservative age, there were always people who argued that there were important things of which their entire tradition was ignorant. Yet, such people before the modern age, they were usually marginalized or persecuted, or else they founded a new tradition and began to argue that they now knew everything that there is to know. For example, the Prophet Muhammad began his religious career by condemning his fellow Arabs for living in ignorance of the divine truth. Yet, Muhammad himself very quickly began to argue that he knew the whole truth because it was revealed to him by God, and the followers of Muhammad therefore began calling him the seal of the prophets, the last prophet, because after Muhammad there is no need of further revelations. His revelations contain all the truth humanity needs to know. Modern day science is very unique because it openly admits our collective ignorance regarding not trivial matters, but regarding the most important questions of all. And scientists, when they say that previously we didn't know, scientists usually do not start arguing that now they know everything. Darwin, for example, never argued that he was the seal of the biologists, the last biologist, and that now he has solved, once and for all the big questions of life. Even after centuries of extensive scientific research, biologists and physicists and chemists and so forth, they admit that they still don't have any good explanation, for example, for the way that the brain produces consciousness. We don't know how the brain does it. Physicists admit that they don't know what caused the Big Bang, and they don't know how to reconcile quantum mechanics with the theory of general relativity. So this is the first characteristic of modern science, its willingness to come and say, we don't know, to admit ignorance. This willingness to admit ignorance has made modern science far more dynamic and inquisitive than any previous tradition of knowledge. But modern science does not stop there. Once it admits ignorance, it begins to seek new knowledge. And the second unique characteristic of modern science is the way in which it seeks knowledge. We will discuss this novel way, this scientific way of seeking knowledge and the impact which it had upon the world in the next segment.